Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Senior Colloquium for 2022. I'm Tony Marsh, Professor of Health and Exercise Science and Senior Associate Dean of the Faculty in the College, and it's a real pleasure to return in person this year and see Pew Auditorium filled with faculty, staff and students eager to hear these 10 outstanding seniors deliver their orations. Also, welcome to our audience viewing the orations on the live stream. An adaptation of this event continued from last year when we welcomed friends and family from around the world on Zoom. So Senior Colloquium does not happen without a huge commitment from the Wake Forest community. My deep appreciation goes to the faculty and staff who nominated seniors as prospective orators for 2022, the faculty readers who had the challenging task of selecting the 10 orations you will hear today, the faculty judges who will select the top 3 orators, including the top orator who will read their oration at Founders Day Convocation held on Thursday, February the 17th at 4 p.m. in Waite Chapel. Our Dean's Office Fellow, Marie Guy, for her work with student government in publicising the event this year, Dr. John Llewellyn of the Department of Communication for working individually with the students to polish their orations, and finally my colleague in the Dean's Office, Sarah Frederick, for all her work in coordinating the faculty, the students, the readers, and the judges, and working with our information systems colleagues, D.L. Dillingham and Preston Neal, to make this event a success. Thank you, sincerely thank you, for making this work. It's now my pleasure to ask our Provost and Professor of Politics and International Affairs, Dr. Rogan Kirsch, class of 86, to offer some opening remarks and give his unique perspective on this great Wake Forest tradition of senior orations. Provost Kirsch.
Thank you, Senior Associate Dean Marsh, President Wente, distinguished guests, friends, families, cheerers on, and most important, orators. As Dean Marsh said, welcome to what is really one of the most beloved annual events on the Wake Forest calendar. And I can't help but think back 35 years to my own presence among the 10, as you are today. I actually remember all but one title of the group that I presented with all those years ago. It was a little less elaborate back then. Instead of the beautiful confines of a remodeled Pew Auditorium, the 10 finalists and committee members, no guests permitted, crowded into a conference room in Ronaldo Hall. There was no Benson then, so that's where we had it then. It's wonderful to think back across who's been here before you. 79 years ago, on a campus that had been dominated for 4 years by World War II, a senior named Ed Wilson gave an oration called "Let Us Dare to Do Our Duty." That same Ed Wilson, of course, Provost Emeritus, turned 99 last week and would be here if he could, as he has so many years. 3 years after Dr. Wilson, the first woman orator, Nancy Clyde Easley, spoke. She had an oration that the text of which is lost to time, but the title is enormously fascinating. Clod or continent? Question mark. Between 75 and 100 years ago, if you look at the titles of what you're about to perform, you see topics that feel so extraordinarily timely and fresh today. Preserving the mental health of Wake Forest students. Is Wake Forest athletics declining? 3 question marks. And just over 100 years ago, an oration entitled "Surviving the Pandemic," about the Spanish flu. 70 years ago, there was an oration by Betty Jo Ring titled "The Wake Forest Woman." It concluded by invoking the words, "Me too, we too." And a few years back, several of us here will recall, then senior named Melvin Washington, who gave a mighty oration on the separate experiences of African American students at Wake Forest. He used homecoming as his model, and we made a whole set of changes since. So these words will move us not just to tears and excitement and engagement with yours, but to action as a result. We're so honored and grateful that you 10 are willing to carry on this tradition and invest it with new life. This may feel at this exact moment like a terrible burden you bear. It is actually a gift you give us. Without your plunging in and experiencing your Wake Forest as you have, without your willingness to express vulnerability and take intellectual risks, and then take those 3.5 plus a bit years and distill it all into what you're about to say to us, this long and, I dare say, noble tradition of senior orations would come to a halt. So each of you take a deep breath. Your work is really already done. We can't wait to hear what you have to say, and we will remember your orations for generations to come. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Provost Kirsch. And now to our senior orators. Each student will be introduced by a faculty or staff member who knows that student very well, and the order is alphabetical in case you're wondering. One final note this year, never a dull moment, save rabid raccoons under the Four Chairmen's Bridge and all of that. Here we are. As all of you know, we were forced to quickly reschedule this event as a result of the disruption caused by the fertilizer plant fire last week. Our first orator, Mia Albury, is actually on an aeroplane as I speak, flying back to Winston-Salem from a previously scheduled graduate school interview. With quick organisation by Sarah, DL, Preston and Marie, Mia was able to give her oration to a small audience in Pew last week, which we have recorded. We'll see that recording now, followed by a quick podium change, set up ready for the next orator. So here is Mia, spacebar DL.
Hello, my name is Courtney Owen, and I'm the assistant coach of the women's soccer team here at Wake. Today, I have the privilege of introducing Mia Albury. For the past 4 years, Mia has been a vital member of our soccer team. On top of that, she is also currently an undergraduate engineering TA, an engineering research assistant, and a member of both the Engineering Student Advisory Council and Society of Women Engineers. Mia is from Denver, Colorado. She is majoring in engineering with minors in both math and Spanish. After school, Mia plans to go back to graduate school and pursue a master's degree in either engineering or business. Her oration is titled Lessons from a Chair.
Wake Forest University began to challenge me before I even set foot on the campus, sending me into a panic when I read the application question asking prospective students to write a top 10 list. With my next 4 years at stake, I struggled with the openness of what to write about, what they were looking for, and what would set my application apart. 4 years later, I think about this question much differently. The challenge of writing a top 10 list would now be a wonderful opportunity to express myself and think creatively. However, that growth did not come immediately, and it was the challenges along the way that shaped my transformation. The first of these obstacles arose in my freshman year engineering class, where I was tasked with building a chair entirely out of cardboard and tape that could support the weight of a human. This assignment sticks out, in part because of how I still brag to my friends about the chair I built, but also because, in hindsight, the lessons I gained from building my chair are a microcosm of the defining lessons of my time at Wake Forest. Although I could certainly now complete a top 10 list of lessons learned at Wake, I will give you a snapshot of my top 3. Number 1, the foundation. Most obviously, the key to a successful cardboard chair is the foundation. The base of the chair is critical, as that is what supports people. In college, we all have bad days, down times, and need the support of the community around us. Wake Forest has a foundation of genuinely wonderful people who want to support and help other students. This foundation holds the school together. The community is made up of more than just my closest friends. It is also made up of peers who will help me understand something at 11 p.m., the night before a test, when I admittedly started studying too late. It is made up of someone who will stop to ask how you were doing, maybe after you got that test back, and you were walking through the quad, visibly upset. More than anything, the foundation of Wake Forest is a community that teaches people it is okay to ask for help. When you do, you will be shown support by so many people you did not know cared about you so much. That same foundation also shapes students to then be the support for someone else. Number 2, angles. Above the foundation, my chair was to be made of what I intended to be equilateral triangles. I quickly realized that I could not cut every single angle the exact same, and nor did they need to be. They even began to work better and proved to be stronger when they were not the same, as different areas of the chair required varying strength levels. In the same way, there is not a certain angle or person who embodies Wake Forest University. The campus is strongest because of the diversity of people that make up the student, staff, and faculty populations. Furthermore, different angles bring different perspectives. Every single class, campus activity, and organization is better for the diversity of background and thought that participants bring. There is a specific reason that not all classes at Wake Forest are strictly lectures. The professors recognize that the student body has the power to teach and inspire some of the lessons better than a PowerPoint might, because no two students are exactly alike. Number 3, transportable. One of the few requirements of the chair project was that it had to be transportable. You could not tape it down or make it such an odd size that it couldn't be moved. This requirement is analogous to the lessons learned at Wake Forest. Wake Forest classes demand a lot from their students. There are tight deadlines, hard tests, and long essays. What I failed to realize at first when I was going through each of these was the intention behind them. It would have been much easier to tape my chair to a wall for support or to have all open note tests. However, if that were the case, I never would have been able to take my lessons learned or my chair with me. They would have stayed fixed and placed at Wake Forest, and I would be entering my next chapter with much less clarity. Beyond just learning how to take a double integral, which candidly I'm not confident I will use frequently, I'm taking with me the classroom lessons of teamwork, collaboration, and perseverance, among many other immeasurable qualities. I've learned how to advocate for myself, whether that be in a class or with friends, and that is certainly one of the many lessons that I will need to bring with me wherever I go. In all of this, the details of the assignment ultimately just challenged me with building a cardboard chair. However, it was more than a challenge. It was an opportunity to work with new classmates and to push myself to think creatively. It was an opportunity to see things from multiple perspectives. It was one of the many Wake Forest moments that taught me to really take pride in what you were doing and what you've accomplished, even 4 years later, even if it is just a cardboard chair. Now, like many of my classmates, I face the challenge of what to do next. There is the challenge of where to live, how to meet new friends, and how to feel fulfilled in ways that college might have otherwise provided. But in each of those challenges is, again, an opportunity. I have the opportunity to move somewhere completely new, to meet people with entirely different backgrounds than my own, and to keep learning as I go. While it will be difficult, I take with me all the tools for finding success that Wake Forest has given me. This university has shown me not just how to build a solid chair, but also a promising future. Thank you.
Next orator is Catherine Finch.
Hello, I am Ann Phelps, the Director of Programming in the Program for Leadership and Character, a role that has afforded me the wonderful pleasure of getting to know Catherine Finch. Catherine came to Wake Forest from Manhattan as a presidential scholar, recognized for her world-class career as a dancer, who somehow nonetheless found herself majoring in philosophy and political science and international affairs in her desire to improve the lives and well-being of women she knows personally, as well as in complex systems in our society. Catherine's versatile talents and passions have led her to accept a position at Goldman Sachs, where upon graduation, she will begin her work as a full-time analyst. I am honored to invite her to share her senior oration entitled "The Statue Underneath."
Thank you so much, Anne, for that lovely introduction. It is hard to say whether you will ever be able to catch up. These were the soul-destroying words a mentor of mine would often repeat to me in my early teens. My passion for ballet, in one person's eyes, set me up for failure. At what, I was unsure. I carried an overwhelming weight on my shoulders, a fear that I may not be capable enough to contribute meaningful ideas to the world. According to some measurement, I did not yet understand. All of this changed when I met Associate Dean of Admissions Thomas Ray during my admissions interview at Wake Forest. The first question he asked me after I described my biggest challenge was, if you could sit right across from President Trump in the Oval Office and propose one piece of legislation, what would it be? Suddenly, gone was the bar against which I was previously measured. I realized that I could weaponize the challenges I had overcome in my life to make the world a better place for others. I needed nothing but a true understanding of my passions to lay the course for how I could become an effective activist. On our first day of orientation, almost 4 years ago, gathered together as a class in Waite Chapel, the class of 2022 was asked to write letters to our future selves at graduation. We will not come together as a whole class for a similar assembly until our graduation this spring, 4 years later. We looked at each other nervously as we scribbled on paper, feeling vulnerable in the eyes of our own future selves. For many of us, myself included, we could not even picture the persons we would be at the end of the next 4 years. We knew we were here for a purpose, one that would entail a sense of self-discovery, yet the end result of who we might become was somewhat intangible. As I reflect on that moment, I see us as blocks of marble. Having experienced some life, each block was a different size, possessing various cracks and crevices in different places. Each day in this institution would chip away at our hard exterior, soon to reveal the statue within. According to my research, it would take a Greek sculptor roughly 12 months to produce one marble statue. Over the course of 4 years, we definitely had our work cut out for us. But as I consider all of the inspiring people with whom I am so fortunate to be graduating, I know it was for a purpose. Great things truly do take time. Many of us began our courses in 2018 with trepidation. What would become of us? Of what would we soon learn? However, in each of our classes, our professors wanted us to take our individually constructed ideas and opinions to form our own knowledge about the information presented to us. In my first philosophy course, Professor Francisco Gallegos wanted me to consider, question, and challenge myself and my beliefs as shaped by the systems in which I had spent large portions of my life. In my writing seminar with Professor Mary Ann Earhart, I was challenged to write draft after draft, boiling down my language until I was vulnerable enough to write exactly what I thought. I overcame the fear that my own thoughts, as shaped by my life experiences, might not deserve to be heard. In classes with Professor Jack Amaro and Professor Winley, I identified the cause to which I will be tied for the rest of my life: strengthening women around the world. Our professors listened. They recognized when we were most fired up in class, and they allowed us to develop interests within each subject. They helped us find a role for these interests to evolve into our everyday lives. All of this was possible for each of us due to two factors that are unique to the DNA of Wake Forest: our strong relationships with the professors who inspire us, and our existence within an institution that is dedicated to teaching us how to make a difference in this world. I have come to tell people outside of Wake Forest community that this institution is best described by the following words stated by Gandhi: be the change you wish to see in the world. Each of our professors shared the passions intertwined in their life's work, otherwise known as the changes that they are making in the world through their contributions. In a beautiful exchange, they helped us identify those same passions within ourselves. We prepared to embark on our own postgraduate journeys. Together, in trying times amidst global strife and polarization, we are tied and we are unified by our identity as changemakers. Changemaking is the Wake Forest currency, compassion is our language, and empathy is the air we breathe. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to read Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, in which she shares 2 truths about leadership and vulnerability that I have seen reflected within our own striving for Pro Humanitate at Wake Forest. First, she says, vulnerability is having the courage to show up when you cannot control the outcome. The students and faculty of this institution exist in and enforce an environment that uses open curiosity to make discoveries about the self and the outside world. Second, she says, leaders have to create and hold standards higher than what we experience. As students, we leave Wake Forest equipped to spread these standards wherever we may travel next. As first years, we had the courage to be vulnerable. We showed up and participated over the past 4 years wholeheartedly, fully acknowledging in those letters we wrote to our future selves that we could not control the outcome of our time here. But we ultimately learned that we could control how much of ourselves we put into this process. We now know that the self and world discovery we experienced here liberated parts of ourselves that were most desperate to act. We leave with the understanding that we will now help the world discover its most beautiful shape, as our professors helped us discover ourselves. It has been the greatest gift to listen and learn from our peers as we've evolved into increasingly aware and more striking versions of ourselves over the past 4 years. The gift of discovery that we received and gave to each other, in turn, will be the gift that we give to this world. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Erin Hensley, an assistant professor in the Department of Engineering. I am so pleased to be introducing Anna Kate Himes. I've had the opportunity to teach Anna Kate in several of my core engineering courses. Then I got to get to know her better as she served as an undergraduate TA in one of those courses as well. Anna Kate is from Nashville, Tennessee. She is majoring in engineering and hopes to work in industry after graduation. I am so honored to introduce her oration entitled Taught to Lead, Empowering Women at Wake Forest.
Thank you, Dr. Hensley. My second day at Wake was chaotic, to say the least. I thought I was adjusting to the college life until I walked out of my advisor's office and shattered my phone by dropping it in the Scales breezeway. Barely usable, I called my family crying on the swing that hangs in Davis Field. Not a great start to the day. I made it through my first year seminar fine that morning with no issues, and then I had to make it to Wake Downtown in 30 minutes for my first engineering course. As some of you might know, this is a completely feasible amount of time, but I was convinced that I would arrive late to class and miss the shuttle. So I ran, yes, actually ran to Benson Circle, and I arrived hot, sweaty, and tired. And so then, riding along in the bus full of eager students, I began to get nervous about what the program would be like. I'd heard the horror stories about other engineering programs that were academically rigorous, cutthroat, and male-dominated. So when I stepped into the auditorium, I was welcomed by my professors, but I still felt a little out of place. But as my professors began to introduce themselves, I realized that the teaching team was primarily female. I even noted that the head of the department was a female engineer. I immediately felt more at home here at Wake because of the representation of women across the discipline. I came into that class feeling frazzled and missing the comforts of my home, but left with the assurance that this program was different. Diversity of thought and representation was important, which is unprecedented in engineering. I realized that there was a possibility that not only could I have a place at Wake Forest, but I had the potential to thrive under unique leadership. The engineering department was beyond what I could have imagined as that nervous freshman, as I experienced the intentionality of each professor and the department. In my first few years, I was trusted to be on the student advisory committee and even got to help with student interviews of candidates to join the teaching staff. I had a front row seat into the growth of the department and helped identify ways to create a better experience for students. Dr. Parakos, who is the head of the department, would pause regularly and meet with students for reflection and welcomed any feedback on the program, from courses to the spaces we regularly used. She is dedicated to the program beyond what is required of her and is able to be a strong force for change. Still, Dr. Parakos never ceases to ensure that conversation is facilitated to improve the performance of the department. Her leadership is evident in the recent announcement that the department received ABET accreditation. I have never considered myself to be a leader, but instead enjoy considering other people's opinions and following their direction. My personality is laid back and I go with the flow to the point where my friends can become frustrated. Even my family agrees that I am indecisive, from what to eat for dinner to what to write the speech about. I struggle to make decisions and take the lead. My time under the leadership of my professors has led me to change. Not only do they make me feel confident to take on challenges and become an effective decision maker, but they also model servant leadership. When we were sent home in the spring of 2020, I was in the middle of a control systems and instrumentation engineering course. This class was centered around hands-on labs that involved complicated circuits. During that time, we were conducting a project to create a system that could read a person's echocardiogram, which measures the heartbeat. My class was left with no tools to build these systems at home, but Professor Hensley remained agile. She was willing to go into the classroom and record her own and her children's heartbeats so that we could still use our online tools to analyze them. This is just one example of how Professor Hensley took initiative to ensure that we were not blocked by an ongoing pandemic from reaching our learning goals for the course. At the end of the course, Professor Hensley hand-wrote each student a letter, thanking them for such a great semester and sent them to their respective homes. I could not believe that she was thanking us when it was her flexibility and perseverance that made me feel connected to the course despite being hundreds of miles away. These instances show another glimpse into the leadership that I encountered within the engineering department. And I use her as a role model for how I strive to lead in a way that instills confidence in others. Her leadership is a unique blend of strength, conviction, and humility, and she distinguishes herself by caring deeply and intentionally about her students. That next semester, I was asked to be a teaching assistant for the same course, as Professor Hensley mentioned. And since I had taken the class early, I was put in the peculiar position of being a TA for students my own age. Instead of shying away from their responsibility, I dove into my role because I felt comfortable with Professor Hensley. She creates an environment in which students feel safe to take risks and exceed expectations. I knew that she would let me take ownership of the grading, but was always there if I needed her. This opportunity allowed me to see how I can thrive in leadership positions, especially difficult ones when I was asked by my friends and peers to give them good grades, which I never fell for. Maya Angelou once said, "A leader sees greatness in other people. He nor she can be much of a leader if all she sees is herself." This summarizes the leadership that has been modeled for me at Wake Forest. My professors care first and foremost about the development of their students professionally and personally. I look forward to seeing Wake Forest flourish under another strong female, Dr. Winty, and all she can do to make future Deeks feel like they can be confident leaders. Thank you.
My name is Adam Cadlack, and I'm a teaching professor in the Department of Philosophy here at Wake Forest. I have had the distinct pleasure of having Liat Klopu in 3 of my classes in her time here at Wake. And I remember thinking in the first class I ever had her in, Contemporary Moral Problems in Wake Downtown, that this was a student who should definitely take more philosophy. And I'm happy at this point to be supervising her very excellent honors thesis in philosophy on research ethics in the wake of medical atrocities like Nazi experimentation and the Tuskegee syphilis study. Liat is from Baltimore, Maryland, and is majoring in philosophy with a minor in economics. She currently plans to take a gap year after graduation to work as a paralegal, probably take a big deep breath, and then attend law school. The title of her presentation today is Commencing Character.
Thank you, Dr. Cadlack. The problem with good advice is that it often comes too late. That's why in hindsight, I realized what a blessing it was to have been put into my first year seminar, Commencing Character, How Should We Live? The course challenges students to engage with a selection of commencement speeches, to think critically about who they are and what it means to live a life of virtue. As a freshman reading remarks traditionally given to seniors in graduating classes, here was an opportunity to get good advice right on time, to possess the moral of the story before it even begins. Beyond just humorous anecdotes and moving quotes, commencement addresses offer us perspective cultivated over years of experience, applicable not only to the scattered, still probably naive graduating student, but also, as it turns out, to the scattered, naive college freshman as well. Like most first years, I stepped onto Wake's campus in August of 2018, ready to live out the quintessential college experience. Here I was at my dream school, prepared to build friendships that last a lifetime and take advantage of my independence miles away from home. I was ready to explore every class, join every campus club, find my niche community here, create ridiculous stories to tell one day, be a part of every tradition, and above all, make Wake a home away from home. But as is often the case, these expectations don't play out as we hope in our first year of college. Friendships came and went, organizations rejected me, the pressure to succeed, to jump through the next hurdle on the resume, and race to figure out what I wanted to do with my life often overwhelmed my capacity to enjoy classes in the present. A fear of closing off options for myself or straying from the status quo made me reluctant to step out of my comfort zone. That newfound independence I sought gradually seemed overrated. Loneliness often kicked in, not to mention the mold in my freshman dorm room only seemed to make everything worse. So my first year of college was not perfect, and frankly, I could not be more thankful that it wasn't. Because as each expectation went unmet, I was forced to ask myself what's really important in a college experience. And the more this question daunted me, the more solace I found in my first year seminar, where in address after address, speakers seemed to value their college years for more than the capacity to fulfill those standard experiences. Indeed, very few of them found it significant enough to mention the major that helped them land their first job, the club they led, or the city they studied abroad in. Instead, they felt more compelled to talk about the messier parts of college, their setbacks and their failures. Those were the moments I soon realized which taught them lessons that would transcend the boundaries of college. So what is really important in a college experience? What is college for? I asked myself the question again as COVID cases surged during the spring of my sophomore year and conversations of life and death permeated the discourse. I wondered whether I was really experiencing college when its essential elements, the campus, the classrooms, the people, were all confined to a computer screen, no longer present as we knew them. The words prestige, internships, graduate school, scholarship, football games, Greek life, all of which once meant something important, something so consequential, floated around me rather worthlessly. We, university students, belong to a world of people who had suddenly lost their way, left to wonder how to value experiences when they are no longer so stringently defined for us. And yet, as we all soon came to realize, these are the times when universities are most needed. When the world is at a collective loss, liberal arts education steps up as a guide. It offers to prepare students not only for lives of thought and work, but also for lives of civic engagement, to ensure that students have the skills and capacity to look, think, and act beyond self-interest, to be mindful of the greater good. In one of the most brilliant commencement speeches ever written, David Foster Wallace said to the Kenyon class of 2005, 20 years after my own graduation, I've come gradually to understand that the liberal arts cliche about teaching you how to think is actually shorthand for a much deeper, more serious idea. Learning how to think really means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to and to choose how you construct meaning from experience. Wallace here is endorsing the idea that a higher education doesn't just throw knowledge at students, but rather teaches them how to compose their thoughts and construct meaning from knowledge selectively. And as it turns out, Wake is one of the few to get this right. Over the last 4 years, I've recognized that our school, beyond its imperfections, values above all cultivating good character in students. The kind of character that directs us to think with empathy and see realities that we are unaccustomed to. This value was very much present in my first year seminar and has colored the rest of the initiatives I've been a part of here through Wake's Leadership and Character program. But it also reigns over us every day through campus organizations and traditions that embody the spirit of Pro Humanitate, through liberal arts courses that teach us to stay critically aware of hidden injustices in our institutions and to embrace each other's differences. Wake prioritizes the difficult over the simple. What can we do to serve our community over what our community can do to serve us? So what is important in a college experience? With a bitter perspective over the last 4 years, I'd pretty simply say to make us good people, no matter the major or the professional pursuits. To shape our values so that what we choose to prioritize and how we choose to compose our thoughts and construct meaning from experience is done with virtue and good morals. College is more than just a sequence of the right moves. It's more than a traditional roadmap you follow to earn prestige. College is more than a seamless experience. Let it be messy, let it be hard, and let it be imperfect. It'll give you a chance to understand what to prioritize and what to leave behind. It'll give you a chance to be an upstanding, cognizant human being, and it'll give you an opportunity to learn lessons that will transcend university boundaries and serve you for years to come. This is just the place to do it. Thank you.
Well, my name is Michael Lamb, and I'm a professor in the Interdisciplinary Humanities program and director of the program for Leadership and Character. And it's my great honor tonight to introduce Betsy Lake from Richmond, Virginia. Betsy's a double major in philosophy and politics and international affairs and has been very active across campus, including in our program for Leadership and Character, where last summer she was a Principal Pluralism Fellow and impressed all of us with her deep intelligence, her very careful analytical thought, her strong character, and her ability to navigate thoughtfully across differences. Betsy's planning to go next year and work before attending graduate professional school after that, so we're glad to have her here today to talk about wrestling with the shame of uncertainty. Betsy.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb. So, as Dr. Lamb just so eloquently put, my name is Betsy Lake, and I am a double major in politics and philosophy. But why can I never leave it at just that? I always have to follow it up with, but don't worry, I'm planning to go into law. It's as if I'm trying to reassure others and myself that these 4 years, my bachelor's degree, my countless hours of hard work, and my substantial student debt are all going to be worth it, that they're going to pay off.
But what does it even mean to have an education that pays off? Some might say a degree that pays off is one that provides a monetary return on the investment in education. That might be the Farrell Hall endorsed answer. I honestly would have no clue because the only time I step into the business school is to get bagels and the good study tables. That assertion is true though, at least to a degree. I recognize that it is simply not an option for me and most others to pursue our passions without regard for finances. I do need to make sure that my degree puts food on the table. But I want to believe that we're all here for reasons that extend beyond mere financial return on investment. Is that really reasonable, though? Believing in a greater purpose to education almost feels like believing in the Loch Ness Monster. Even though you don't know if it exists, and you've certainly never seen it for yourself, you still just really want to believe in it. And maybe that is irrational, but I want to believe, and I have to believe that there's more to my education and to life than just getting a job that pays the bills and maybe gets me a vacation home if I'm lucky. Others might say that the experiences people have in college make the degree worthwhile. And there's no doubt that I'll walk away from Wake Forest with a vast collection of priceless memories, but no matter how many of those stories I recount, I doubt I will ever be able to fend off all of the eye rolls and eyebrow raises from my extended family. So, even though it really feels like summer camp sometimes, I will concede that college does not merely serve the purpose of having fun and creating memories. I also doubt that I'm the only person who has fallen prey to the unsolicited advice of this distant family friend or that ex-boyfriend's parent. They may ask you what you want to do with your education out of politeness or maybe even genuine interest, but as we all know, the conversation inevitably turns into what they think you should do with your education. And all you can do is smile and nod along. But if you have enough of these conversations, you might even start to agree with them. Now, I have attended a lot of these uninvited lectures, but I am incredibly fortunate to have developed really strong relationships with professors and mentors on campus to counteract the negative effects of those outside opinions. Over this last year, I've sought out the advice of these people who I hold in the highest regard, hoping they can just tell me the answer. I tell them, here are the things that I'm really good at, here are the things that I love to do, and here are the things I really care about, expecting them to respond with the perfect life path tailor-made for me. While they provide a lot of helpful ideas and resources, frustratingly, they do not tell me exactly what I should do with my life. In these discussions, I've realized that no one, not even the smartest people I've ever met, who genuinely have my best interest in mind, can tell me the purpose that my education should serve. Unfortunately, I have to figure that out myself. I've also come to realize the deep privilege I enjoy to even be able to think about education in this way. Not everyone has the luxury to be able to obtain a degree in higher education, to go to a school like this, to choose what to study, to have such amazing mentors, and to pick a career they want. To be able to look at education and vocation in any other light besides one of necessity is such a luxury, and I'm so fortunate to be able to do that. These realizations during my time at Wake Forest have forced me into serious introspection about what I want to do with my life. But they've also sometimes seemed to lead me into a sort of decision paralysis. I've spent so long telling myself and others that I will follow this particular path and go to law school right after college that when I begin to doubt that path, I feel like a complete failure. Because I'm not going straight to graduate school or Wall Street or Capitol Hill or the Peace Corps after I graduate, I feel like I must have done something wrong. Deep down, I know that's not true, but the Wake Forest environment can make uncertainty feel like failure. I know I would rather take the time necessary to think deeply about my life path now rather than 10 years down the road into a career I hate, but even rationalizing my situation in this way does not diminish the shame that comes with uncertainty. Searching for a purpose feels a lot like looking for the Loch Ness Monster right now. I finally dove into the water, and it sort of feels like I'm drowning, but the thing that keeps me going is the hope that I might one day find it, my purpose. I could choose to live my life on dry land, but if I did that, I fear I would always carry the regret with me that I never even tried to see what else was out there. Maybe I will drown trying to find what I'm looking for, but truthfully, I would rather that than leave my passions undiscovered and the things I care about untouched. I am a soon-to-be graduated double major in politics and philosophy, and I'm still figuring things out. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jose Villalba, and I'm the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, as well as a Professor of Counseling. I am humbled and excited to introduce B. Pearson. I've had the unearned privilege of knowing B since spring 2019, and I'm grateful for every chance I've had to learn with and from them. I told B shortly after we met that they were a force, and they've lived up to that notion in all that they have gifted this campus. B is from Mount Holly, New Jersey, and they are majoring in history with a minor in American Ethnic Studies and Politics and International Affairs. B is currently deciding which opportunities to pursue after graduation. Their oration is titled, Seized at the Root.
Thank you, Dr. V. It takes 109 minutes to get from my parents' house in the woods to the gates of my forest. The windy road is not very scenic. It doesn't feature an irresistible snack spot. Its highways, back roads, and pit stops are all unremarkable. Yet, here I am describing it. I've memorized the twists of the bypass and the turn onto MLK Drive, not because of where I was coming from, but because I was headed home. Don't get me wrong, I cherish my 2 parents, 3 brothers, 3 sisters, and a partridge in a pear tree. My family and I have lived up and down the East Coast, forwarding mail from Massachusetts to Florida, to North Carolina, to New Jersey, and all the way back again. My favorite memories come from the moments where we were in motion. But I never once imagined myself trading my fast-paced northern lifestyle for a southern campus framed by magnolia trees. My family was a tight-knit haven. But by my senior year of high school, I was yearning for stability. Well, the last 4 years at Wake have been anything but stable. What surprised me is what I learned in this sea of unrest. For wide-eyed first-year me, the calm before the storm went by the name BUILD, a pre-orientation program that was largely BIPOC students coming together to learn about leadership and diversity. We spent a few days munching on Moe's, another few with local alum, and the last doing all sorts of leadership activities. But at the end of the week, we had a huge dinner for all students engaging in pre-orientation. Here, the contrast first came into view. My group was small and mostly comprised of Black students, but other groups like Spark and Deacon Camp, let's just say they literally paled in comparison. They dwarfed us in size and were largely white. Our eyes were settled on different goals, different wakes. While they practiced old traditions, we dreamed up new policies. Soon this trend would continue. So on to first year, and probably like everyone my age, I had the typical college experience of decimated friendships, unrequited crushes, and disappointing math grades. I remember getting lost on my way to my FYS tucked away in the maze-like halls of Tribble. I cried over chicken from the grill station after I bungled my audition for an a cappella group, but I experienced the atypical as well. I crowded into the then all too small Black Student Alliance lounge to reel at the sight of blackface photos. I choked back to tears as I described the realities of campus racism to our then college president. I was procrastinating in Benson when my friends and I received death threats from white supremacists online. Remember that contrast that I mentioned at pre-orientation? Here it was again. Most of my peers were rushing Greek organizations or battling Introduction to Accounting. But me, I was standing in front of hundreds, fervent, trying to name what Black and brown students, faculty, and staff needed to survive. So in all this instability and pressure, as I lost track of the normal, I still found myself and somehow found a home at Wake. It's easy to see this as a list of stresses and breaking points, as something uniquely terrible that I had to deal with, but it is not. I know that every personal triumph made me stronger. Every trial expanded my community, and that community deals with these trials every year. During that first year, I met Dr. Jose Villalba, someone who is now a trusted mentor and even friend. After the initial digital scare, I closed my computer and soon we were laughing and sipping on milkshakes in staunch defiance of racist aims. I clung to this campus. I spent hours in meetings arguing about policy. I spoke in front of hundreds, yearning for better. I searched for and found allies in all of the dissension. I was stretched by those moments and stretched into the outline of the strong person and proud demon deacon I am today. Often when I relay these stories, I'm met with discomfort or pitying eyes, but this isn't a tale of how challenge dragged me down. In chaos and stress, I was built up. Over the next 3 years, I remained uncomfortable, squirming as I sat on the President's Commission for Race and Community, fidgeting as I helped create identity-focused programming in the Women's Center, shivering before taking the digital stage with famed friends of Maya Angelou. These moments weren't about ease, they were about growth. Wake Forest, all of us here have been doing the same thing through pandemics, new presidents, unprecedented change. We have been growing, and it has not been easy. All around us, faculty are overhauling curriculum requirements, staff are drafting and redrafting policies, and students are asking for, no, demanding better. This work is exhausting and thankless at times. And as we reckon with our history, we also look to an equitable future. In this, the lesson of embracing discomfort as we build a home like Wake is all the more applicable. I leaned into the sensation and its lessons because just like in my childhood, being uprooted allows you to flourish, to seize hold of new fertile ground. For those who also find themselves feeling uncomfortable, find power there. I did. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Gross, and I'm an Associate Professor of Engineering and the David and Layla Farr Faculty Director of Entrepreneurship at Wake Forest. It is my pleasure to introduce Andrew Rust. I met Andrew about 3 years ago in my Engineering Measurement and Analysis course, where he studied spine immobilization and water filtration. And it has been such a joy to watch him grow over his time at Wake. Andrew comes to us from his hometown of New Bern, North Carolina. He's majoring in engineering and minoring in computer science and mathematics. He's a pitcher for the Wake Forest baseball team, and he started his own company called Bite Size Learning, offering youth classes in programming, game design, and multimedia production. After graduation, Andrew plans to run his company Bite Size Learning full-time and is also considering graduate school and working part-time as a software engineer. His oration is titled, Rethinking Our Carrots and Sticks.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. I genuinely enjoy the challenge of a jam-packed, busy day. Maybe I'm not the only one out there who does, but I find a certain thrill in rushing from one thing to the next with no time to waste in between. Of course, I too enjoy the rewarding comfort of my bed after a full day of classes, meetings, sports practice, and homework. But as soon as I can finally power down and eventually fall asleep, one thing always happens. My alarm goes off, shooting me back onto the perpetual highway of another hectic day. Whether or not you enjoy being a bit overscheduled like me, I'm sure we can all agree that a sense of productivity and getting things done is fulfilling. Over the years, I devised a strange accountability system with myself, where every night before I go to bed, I plan out my next day on a 3x5 note card that I would keep with me at all times. I treat that little ruled slip of paper as my personal boss, demanding all that it can in a single day. And much like any effective boss, it uses both rewards and punishments to get the most items crossed off the list. For example, maybe after a tough exam, I'm awarded an extra coffee. On the other hand, if I fall victim to procrastination, I'll include a big plate of spinach with dinner. At one point or another, we've all played this game, tricking ourselves into doing things that we lack the willpower to do at the time. I'm probably not the only one who struggled to do much of anything after 6 hours of Zoom classes in my childhood bedroom, hundreds of miles away from my college friends. I always found intrinsic motivation to be an interesting, universal concept. It reminds me of the metaphor of the carrot and the stick. Simply put, a carrot in front of a horse will motivate the horse to move forward. Similarly, a stick striking its backside will also move it forward. Scientifically, it's called the theory of reinforcement, coined by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. In essence, you reward good behavior, you can expect more of it. Punish bad, and you can expect less. Governments, teachers, and parents all use this tried and true tactic to get more of a certain desired behavior. Unknowingly, I too had been using this strategy on myself for years, but I didn't realize its flaws until I found myself in this cyclical pattern where, despite remaining productive in my day-to-day duties, I lacked any serious sense of fulfillment over time. The carrots and sticks I laid out for myself certainly helped to get items crossed off the list, but in turn seemed to strap proverbial blinders on my horse. I felt I was neglecting something more meaningful by just chasing tasks on a note card. It may have taken a little too long to realize that I am in fact much different than a horse. We all are. We are complex beings with a diverse range of emotions, experiences, and imaginations that construct our psychologies quite differently. So how can we balance our short-term motivation with our long-term goals? In my search for answers, I read a book written by a behavioral economist, Daniel Pink. In his book, Drive, he discusses 3 tenets of human motivation in the modern era that top organizations use to create an environment conducive to passion, fulfillment, and productivity. I found these ideas to be especially useful in describing motivation within my life, and I began to rethink my blind obedience to the slip of paper in my pocket. First, we as humans are naturally motivated by a desire to work toward a greater cause, an impact beyond our individual scope, much like the Wake Forest motto, pro humanitate. I'm proud to be a part of the second cohort of engineers here at Wake, and I think back to the many engineering projects I've worked on over the last 4 years. From designing an accessible water filter for those with limited access to clean drinking water, all the way to meticulously mapping and predicting COVID-19 cases. Each project I worked on was tied to some greater impact, far beyond myself. And as a result, I found even these tough engineering projects to be quite rewarding and an easy source of motivation for me, even on days I struggled crossing off anything on my list. A second component of our intrinsic motivation is autonomy, or the opportunity to impart your own technique and style to a problem. One summer, I worked as an online instructor, teaching children about computer programming. After a few weeks, I saw the incredible impact potential that these courses had. But I also had no shortage of ideas on how to make them even better. So just weeks later, I co-founded my own company that offered an untethered experience for kids to explore many different computer programs and develop those creative tech skills. Now, 16 months later, my startup company, Bite Size Learning, is a source of motivation for dozens of passionate children learning technology through their abundant creativity. I am sure we can all relate to times we felt we needed the space and power to do things our way. Lastly, our motivation contains an innate pursuit toward excellence. In all of our everyday lives, we seek feedback often and look for incremental improvements from day to day. For me, I think to the many hours I spend under the lights of the David F. Couch ballpark with my teammates. The passion on that baseball diamond is palpable, and we find any way possible to hone our skills just by an inch or so each day, as baseball is, after all, a game of inches. As I reflect on both the shared and unique experiences between all my classmates and I notice a continuing shift in my personal relationship with internal motivation. I still swear by my note cards and would be quite lost without them. But I see the limitations of this system, and I have gotten better at seeing what lies beyond a single exam, practice, or jam-packed day. The enjoyment of a busy day comes not from a completed list, but rather the thought of each item as baby steps in my own unique journey. A journey of discovering those greater passions and bigger impacts that these small actions can build to become. While I can look back on my time at Wake Forest and physically see the stacks and stacks of note cards, I'd rather look back to the many brilliant people who worked alongside me towards discovering and acting on those ultimate goals of higher purpose. So, chase your carrots and mind your sticks, but don't ignore that deeper yearning for something greater. And remember, you may need to take a step back to see all your steps forward.
Hi, my name is Nina Lucas, and I am a professor and chair of the Department of Theater and Dance, and I'm honored to introduce you to Adarian Sneed. Majoring in business and minoring in theater, Adarian is what we call in our show business a triple threat. A dancer, a singer, and an actress. She's a recipient of the Presidential Scholarship in Theater, and she's one of the most sought after actors in our department. She's performed in at least 5 of our main stage productions and in the North Carolina Black Repertory Company's musical, Jelly's Last Jam. After graduation, she plans to move to New York as a marketing analyst at American Express and continue to explore her performance opportunities. Her oration is titled, "Everything Changes, Nothing Remains the Same." Adarian.
Change. My grandma used to say, everything changes, nothing remains the same. She would say this quite often, and it makes me think about the influence it had on my life. For many, change is a challenging thing. For college students, it is not only challenging, but also inevitable. In order for me to be where I am today, a change had to be made. My family means everything to me. When I was a senior in high school, I knew I wanted to branch out, but I also didn't want to be too far away from home either. Being from New Jersey, North Carolina was the perfect distance, just a 2-hour plane ride away, but far enough to let me step into my independence. Even though I knew this was the right change, I was scared. Freshman year, I worried about moving into a new chapter of life with so many unknowns to face. Now, today, being a senior in college, I'm ecstatic that I overcame the fear of change and went for it. Reflecting on this made me think of a better way to approach the fear of change. Change is bound to happen, and what it looks like is out of our control. So if I've learned something over the past 4 years, it is not to be afraid of change. Instead, take it as it comes, because each and every change lends itself to the evolution of our lives. Change is growth. I came to Wake Forest as a presidential scholar for theater. Over the years, I have noticed that my skills have changed as a performer. I've been singing since I was about 5 years old, and for all my musicians and performers, I would be known as an alto, sometimes a tenor when they needed it. I've always felt I could sing higher notes, but since I was capable of hitting those powerful lower notes, I always stayed in that vocal range. It wasn't until college that I began to explore my ability to sing in a higher register. My first voice teacher at Wake Forest was Professor Teresa Radomski. Following her, I studied with Professor Brian Groman and Professor Elizabeth Pacheco-Rose. In addition to all these professors, I've also had support from my uncle, Al Sneed, ever since I was young. My uncle, Al Sneed, he opened my eyes to the magic of theater, and still to this day, helps me with my vocal training as well. Because of the collection of names that I have mentioned, I am now hitting notes that I only dreamed were possible, but notes that Wake was able to make a reality for me. I'll be honest with you though, those first few lessons of my trying to hit high notes, I probably sounded like a struggling cat. As a vocalist and an artist, I was scared. I often wondered if I was truly capable. Should I stop trying? Will I ever change? With time, patience, and my professor's compassion, I did. Now I feel comfortable going to auditions and proudly letting them know I can sing soprano, alto, and tenor if needed. Change is painful. I've always enjoyed writing. Getting my thoughts together and then putting them into a collection of words that flow together almost like a song is a pretty great experience. Over the years, I've written many essays and stories for school, but no matter what the writing was for, the best part was when I finished. That's when I would call my grandma and read her what I had written. My grandma, Mrs. Pearline M. Sneed, was born in Lumberton, North Carolina. She moved to New Jersey in the 70s and had 3 beautiful children. One of them who would grow to be the most beautiful and supportive mother in the world, my mother, April Sneed. Together they raised me. My grandma, who I call Ema, was my best friend. Ever since I was little, we could laugh and talk for hours on end. Ema was the first person in her family to attend college. She was also a retired educator for many years, so she absolutely loved anything about education, especially Wake Forest. She was so proud of me for going here and all the things that I accomplished. Last month, I told her I was nominated to write an essay. As always, she was so proud and would frequently check in on me to see if I was working on it. Unfortunately, she transitioned on December 26, 2021, the day after Christmas. I wrote this piece a week after her passing, and as I sat there finishing my last few words, I felt heavy. A change had occurred. I could not pick up the phone like usual and read to her my finished piece. That was hard. That change was painful. As I've stated, change is inevitable. It is bound to happen. But what I've learned is that change is what causes life to evolve. It may not feel the same, but it can still have qualities of what it once was. So I write these words in her honor and read them to the heavens so she can still hear. Change is growth. Change is painful. Change is today, yesterday, and tomorrow. During my time at college, I've gotten to know change so well that I gladly welcome it. I feel ready to navigate it, to love it, to hate it, to cherish it, and to grow from it. And after today, I hope you do too. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aranda Javikrama. I'm the Harold W. Tribble Professor of Psychology and the Senior Research Scholar in the Program for Leadership and Character. And this evening I have the wonderful privilege of introducing Miranda Wells. Miranda was part of the cohort that I took to London in the spring of 2020, to the Waterhouse. And until we were forced to beat a retreat to the US in the wake of the COVID pandemic, I had a wonderful time getting to know Miranda through Sri Lankan cookery classes, afternoon teas, excursions to lectures at the London School of Economics and to various theatre performances, and also as a student in my public policy and well-being in the Age of Brexit class. She's currently doing a directed study with me, examining age differences in how people impacted by the COVID pandemic make sense of their identity. She is from Rose Hill, North Carolina. She is a double major in psychology and communication. After graduation, she hopes to continue her interest in psychology by doing research on individuals in the autism spectrum. And this evening, she will be speaking to us on STEPS.
Thank you. I really hate stairs. I grew up with stairs in my house and absolutely despised when my mother would tell me to carry my laundry upstairs. As a child, those steps felt entirely tedious and unnecessary. I used to wonder when I would get big and strong so those steps did not feel like such a big task. When my mother was diagnosed with a disabling chronic illness, I began to notice the toll a few extra steps began to take on her. Throughout high school and early college, I searched high and low for inaccessibility. My campus needs a wheelchair ramp here. This video needs subtitles. The stage I'm standing on today does not have wheelchair ramp access. My friends would begin to roll their eyes when I pointed out which buildings on campus do not have elevators. During my freshman year, I began to notice these barriers a little more intimately. My wheezing and dizziness after walking to class, and my inability to focus or speak clearly after walking up a flight of stairs were bright red flags. A doctor's visit and a blood pressure test revealed that my tachycardia after walking less than a mile was not due to me being out of shape. Soon, postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, or POTS, became a defining part of my life. Being diagnosed with the same chronic illness as my mother should not have come as a surprise. For the previous 7 years, I had obsessed over the risk factors, symptoms, statistics, and all that WebMD could tell me. Nonetheless, the diagnosis shook me to my core. Over the past 2 years, I've gone through all 5 stages of grief and back again. As I learned the extra care it learned to live in a body with POTS. I cycled through frustration when I would stutter through sentences. I felt embarrassment when my friends would have to wait for me to catch my breath on the way to dinner. There was loneliness too, when my symptoms became so tiring that I needed to lay in bed in the middle of the day. My depression shouldn't have come as a surprise either. After taking multiple psychology and counseling classes, I became deeply fascinated with the human mind and its complexities. I obsessed over the symptoms, risk factors, and statistics and all that my professors could tell me over the past 4 years. Nonetheless, the diagnosis shook me to my core. Once again, I started to relearn the extra care my body and now mind required. The two disorders became so entangled I couldn't determine what symptom belonged to what. Now every day became a flight of stairs I would have to climb, and I once again wondered when I would get big and strong so it did not feel like such a big task. Through encouragement from friends and family, I began seeking counseling. Through counseling, I've started to work my way up those stairs with the laundry basket of my life on my hip. I have learned coping mechanisms. I restructured my thoughts. I did all the self-care. Despite all this work I had been doing, it did not change the fact that I have extra steps. Steps that my peers and classmates will never know or understand, obstacles I had to overcome. I was determined to use these challenges as an opportunity to show my strength. One of my favorite quotes has always been by Eleanor Roosevelt. "A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong she is until she's in hot water." As a young girl, I used this quote as my mantra. I wanted the world to hit me with its best shot so I could show everyone how strong I was. I recently started learning more about tea. I learned how to brew different varieties and bring out different flavors. And you know what I learned? Different types of tea need to be brewed at different temperatures. If you brew a green tea at the same temperature you brew an herbal tea, do you know what happens? It turns bitter. It is not that green tea is any weaker than an herbal tea, but it has found itself in an environment for which it was not intended. I too grew bitter. I grew bitter towards this university for those inaccessibilities with which I became so intimately acquainted. I became bitter when I was denied more accessible parking. I became bitter when my course was moved to a classroom without elevator access. I became bitter when absences caused by my depression impacted my grades. The environment I found myself in, the one I chose specifically to challenge me so I could show my strength, had made me bitter. There has been sweetness here. The moments spent with lifelong friends here. The journey of self-discovery and acceptance I have trekked here. The incredible education I have worked towards here. These moments were sweet, but improved accessibility on this campus would have made them that much sweeter. Even so, the difficulties I faced, while frustrating and unfair, did help me prove my strength. I showed myself that I am resilient. I will be graduating from a top university while simultaneously battling chronic and mental illness. While I still hold frustration for my experience on this campus, I hold even greater pride in myself for overcoming it all. However, for many students, these obstacles are not one they can surmount. They are not weaker than I am, but the environment they have found themselves in has not allowed them to show their strength. To Wake Forest University, I wish to say, do better. In order for this university to fully foster diversity, it must be accessible. Increase your accessibility, and if you do not know how, ask your students. We have a few ideas. And to those who require extra care, I know there are so many of us carrying invisible burdens. So many of us must take extra steps that our peers and classmates will never know or understand. I am confident that one day you will look back and see all of the resiliency, growth, and strength you have always had. Remember that when you find yourself in hot water. The moral of my story is sometimes extra steps are awful. They can be unfair and unnecessary. You can spend the entire climb in frustration or even despair. Nonetheless, the beautiful thing about steps is that the hardest ones always leave you higher than you were before. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Cohen, and I'm a professor of practice and executive director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Wake Forest University. And I have the pleasure of introducing Grace Williams. Grace is an excellent student, and I've had the privilege of teaching her in 2 entrepreneurship courses. Grace hails from Richmond, Virginia, and is majoring in sociology while minoring in entrepreneurship. After graduation, Grace plans to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, and will begin her career working for Deal Cloud's client success team with a focus on working to perfect their client sites. Her oration is titled The Middle Seat. Grace Williams.
One of the worst feelings in the world is the moment you lock eyes with the Delta employee after placing your suitcase on the scale. Yes, of course, my bag is 12 pounds overweight. Yes, I know I will be paying a ridiculous amount of money to ensure those extra 12 pounds make it on the plane. Then to make matters worse, they always ask when you plan on returning. The agent's judgmental gaze at me for packing a 72-pound bag just for a 3-night trip is almost as terrifying as realizing you have the middle seat on the plane. Even if I am not assigned the middle seat, I am often asked to switch seats to allow couples or families to sit together. Always, and I mean always, I will say yes, of course, and take the middle seat. Sacrificing leg space and elbow real estate is not the worst part of the middle seat. It's sharing close quarters with not just one stranger, but 2. Until recently, I would try to block out the world by listening to music or playing on my phone from the moment I stepped on that plane. Freshman year felt a lot like the boarding process. A group of strangers coming together, forced to surrender personal space with emotions running high. My mom encouraged me to sign up for a pre-orientation program, and Wilderness to Wake seemed like a great idea. No shower or phone, while spending every second with 7 strangers. I mean, sounds like an ideal O week. I do not think through the part where I would be meeting my new roommate and her family for the first time in hiking boots and on day 5 without a shower. The beauty of random rooming is living and going through those first few months with someone you may not have picked for yourself initially. As she is still one of my best friends, I have seen the power of getting to know people in unforeseen circumstances. I've learned to take advantage of fate by learning and listening to people who come into my life. By simply being more friendly and showing interest in others, we can all work towards a sense of togetherness. Saying yes to the middle seat shows my newfound willingness to embrace novel experiences and people as rewarding rather than an annoyance. Being surrounded by strangers can feel intimidating and uncomfortable, but even simple interactions can make someone feel heard and seen. You may never get the chance to learn someone's story without overcoming that temporary uneasiness of introductions. Instead of scrolling through TikTok, I've been challenging myself to ask my neighbor how their day has been during those lulling moments before takeoff. I promise you all that the satisfaction of human interaction suppresses the meaningless time spent on social media. As a kid, my biggest fear with flying was boredom and limited snack options. I would bring every game I owned and enough snacks for the whole flight crew. Having options gave me comfort, until I hit the age where my dad no longer carried my bag for me. With independence and responsibility, you learn what you actually need and what to leave behind. The same idea applies to my time at Wake. I've become selective and intentional with how I spend my spare time, prioritizing the people and activities that uplift me. Setting boundaries and learning to say no has helped me love and understand who I am and what I value. The pressure to attend social events and the fear of missing out slowly disappeared as I felt myself growing more and more confident. The people who genuinely care about me have respected my boundaries, showing me the kinds of friends I want to keep throughout my life. Your imperfections, flaws, and differences are the parts of you that make this world a better place. No one can tell you how to be you. Everyone in this room brings something different to the table, and nothing is more beautiful than a person who is not afraid to be themselves. Embracing, becoming, and being your true self is a moral duty we all have to ourselves and this community. The Wake Forest community has pushed me intellectually to unlearn specific fears by having open, honest, and sometimes challenging conversations. Professor Cohen normalized failure to our senior entrepreneurship class, a lesson I did not know I needed to learn before graduating. His belief that failing is an essential part of personal growth and success reshaped my perspective, creating a sense of confidence towards the looming what's next. Life after college will bring a new set of adjustments, similar to those felt during freshman year. Humans have innate resistance to change, but the confidence and knowledge we've gained at Wake Forest has made the future more exciting and less scary. I will fail repeatedly, but that is okay, and just something I will continue to navigate as part of the process. The friends I've made at Wake have shown me how to overcome failures through their overwhelming support. In the fall of junior year, I searched for a summer internship. My roommates received many Zoom interview in 10, please be quiet texts, and would patiently listen and quiz me to help me prepare. After the many rejections, they'd often write a note or leave some candy on my desk. They didn't let me fail alone. They supported me without me asking, making it easier for me to become vulnerable and completely myself around them. Not only did they change my appreciation for friendship, but they also challenged me to become a better friend. Facing failures away from home while quarantining really expanded my independence and ability to cope with hurt and fear. My experience at Wake Forest has taught me that real friends show up on the good days and the bad days, and being open with others only strengthens human connection. When the plane begins descending, I always notice some passengers holding their armrests extra tight, while others calmly prepare for landing. Graduating from college and starting this next phase of life sparks similar emotions in everyone. It is okay to be scared. It is okay to feel anxious, and it is okay to feel ready and calm. No matter where we land in life, we each share memories and lessons from Wake that prepared us for whatever is next. So, I challenge everyone to talk to new people, be open-minded to new friendships, and embrace failures as part of the process. Love yourself and those around you, because the hardships the world hands us cannot be faced alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Made me wonder what seat Mia had on her plane ride home to Winston-Salem tonight. So once again, our 10 orators have upheld the venerable Wake Forest tradition of senior orations. Please give our orators a great round of applause. I hope these couple of hours gave all of us an opportunity to reflect on this community where we live, teach, work, and study. It takes a lot of courage to share your stories, especially when it's deeply personal and profoundly impacts your life. Your orations underscore the critical role that faculty-student engagement plays in your growth, whatever it may be, in a class project perhaps, the faculty and mentors that you've had that sometimes challenge you, usually help you, in self-discovery and finding your place, recognizing the strengths that you might not know you possess and then thrive, helping you recognize that challenges, whatever they may be, help you grow and build up your character, while also helping you to take a risk and hopefully find your authentic path, your authentic self, your intrinsic motivations, and how to embrace change even when it makes you uncomfortable and when it's painful. Your orations have impact, and I believe all of us will be able to leave here tonight thinking we can do better. Thank you for coming.